So after skipping a generation, Samsung's latest entry-level flagship has now been unveiled. There's lots to like and maybe a few things to loathe, but here are some of our first impressions of the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE or Fan Edition. So if you're scratching your head wondering just what's new here and why the previous generation was skipped, well, it's worth noting that the design certainly treads familiar territory. From afar, I think it really looks eerily like the regular base S23 and S23 Plus, but there are a few little extra tweaks thrown in here for good measure. There's Gorilla Glass 5 instead of Victus for the display and the backplate, which does feel like plastic. At least these are the most prominent from a hardware standpoint. The aluminium frame and weight are always winners when you make these changes, and that helps the product. As durable plastic as it can be, that is, it isn't or doesn't feel particularly expensive, especially as the colours here alternate between the frame and the backplate, and it gives off a candy bar look. It is worth noting that despite this, the S23 FE still has a premium feel, whatever that happens to mean to you. We'd actually liken it somewhere between the A54, which is the cheap phone, and that baseline S23. In this middle ground, it's partially due to the sizing as well, thrown in that for good measure. Sitting in between the base S23 and S23 Plus, the S23 FE comes with a 6.4-inch 120Hz flat AMOLED screen. The long and short of this display is that it is pretty much excellent, as most Samsung phones are at this point. There are slightly thicker bezels in the S23 series though, if that does bother you, and it is worth noting as it is a prominent change to the baseline S23. While we don't want to bore you too much with the internal hardware details, there are some important things going on. The chipset used here is actually last year's Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 in North America, or the Exynos 2200 here in Europe. That latter change is really disappointing given the shift by Samsung to Qualcomm's chipsets in all regions with the most recent S23 launch. That could definitely be a sticking point for global buyers, as Exynos processors really do have quite a bad rep, and it's actually not without good reason, and the Fan Edition devices have always offered Qualcomm as an option for you to buy that later on in the year and not miss out on their under the hood power. There's also 8GB of RAM thrown into the mix with 128GB or 256GB of storage. There's no micro SD card expansion for you to latch onto. Powering the show though is a 4500 mAh internal battery with 25W wired and 15W wireless charging, but no room for reverse wireless charging this time around. You can also see a triple camera system round back. Like much of this package, it's fairly familiar. There's a 50MP main sensor, 12MP ultra wide and 8MP 3x optical zoom. The selfie is 10MP for what it's worth if you are a selfie taker. We didn't really have long enough to test the camera capabilities, but everything is in place for what we consider a competent camera capture experience, and we do have high hopes, as we do with most Samsung flagship phones or even these mid-rangers at this point in 2023. One of the very best things about the S23 FE and one of its core selling points is the 5-year update commitment that's thrown in. That's 4 full operating system updates with 5 years of patches thrown in. It is though a double-edged sword, as Android 14 is actually going to count as one of those upgrades, as actually One UI 5.1 and Android 13 ships with this device. If you do want to know what you're going to expect with One UI 6, then go check out our hands-on with that update down in the description below to get a real taste of what it's going to bring to the table. Given though the short period of time we have spent with the S23 FE, and it was truly quite short, it's actually tough to ascertain just where it sits and who should actually go out and buy this device. It's in a really strange position, especially given the discounts that are now available for the S23 series. The Pixel 8 also poses a big challenge now, given it is available and is available for $100 more with a much longer support window, plus what we consider a much more flagship package thrown in there. We will have more thoughts over the coming weeks on the S23 FE, but I want to ask you, what do you think? Let us know if this is a good Fan Edition smartphone down in the comment sections below. But cheers for watching, and I will speak to you later.